When my mother was very young, she lived on St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and my grandfather ran the Bethlehem sugar refinery on the island. One of his employees was a man named Frank Charles, who worked as a chauffeur for my grandfather. Frank was also very interested in the traditional scratch music of St. Croix, and he founded a modern day scratch band called Blinky and the Roadmasters.
Oopsies.
Now, Blinky and the Roadmasters were invited to come to Washington as part of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival back in one of the years in 1970s. And when I knew they were coming, I told Carolyn that we should go down and see them. And I wanted to see if I could meet Frank Charles because I had never met him and my mother knew him very well. So the day when they were going to perform, we were down on the mall and I saw a man standing behind the stage who from a distance looked like Frank Charles. So I told Carolyn, I said, well, I'm going to go down and I'm going to see if that man is Frank Charles. So I went down, and as I got closer to him, I could see he was wearing an ID badge that said Blinking and the Roadmasters, so I knew he was part of the group, but I could tell that he wasn't Frank Charles. But I went up to him anyway, and I said, excuse me, sir. I said, did Frank Charles come up with the band? And he looked at me like, how do you even know who Frank Charles is? And I said, oh, Frank used to work for my grandfather. And he looked at me again, even with a more puzzled look on his face. And I told him, I said, well, my grandfather was Falmer Anderson. And then the man broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. And he said to me, oh, man, he says, I knew your grandfather. He was a good man. And then he proceeded to tell me, oh, the doctor told Frank his pressure was too high, he couldn't come on the trip. So I went back up and I thanked him and went back up to my seat. And I was thinking, I said, this is really strange. Here I just was talking to a man that I never met before in my life. I don't even know his name. And he knew my grandfather better than I ever did because my grandfather died when I was only 2 years old. So it's a really small, small world.